Bravo bosses. This is the Bravo Investigator podcast. I'm your host, Dana, and today we are talking about the Summer House audio leaks, additional Instagram updates, Watch What Happens Live with Lindsay Hubbard, and a Summer House recap. Let's get into it. Happy Tuesday evening, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good day, good night. I cannot believe that I am actually getting this episode out like in real time, so I'm really, really proud of myself. Hey, you released this episode of Summer House like an hour or two early, so I was like, yes, okay, that leaves me enough time because those of you who know how I roll, how I record, you know that I need to watch the show at least twice in order to be able to have like fruitful thoughts about it. So this left me enough time to record twice, or sorry, to watch it twice and enough time to record. Now, it is 8:30 right now, so I'm hoping to record, and then when Watch What Happens Live comes on, I'm going to watch that and then add that on to this episode. If I, for some reason, get too tired or for some reason have trouble getting access to Watch What Happens Live, then this will just be Summer House and all the Scamanda updates, including the leaked audio, of course. But regardless, we are still doing the damn thing today. So let's get into it. We're going to start with lots of these Scamanda updates. Even though we only talked just yesterday, there have obviously been more updates. It's wild how often I need to update you guys basically on the every other day basis. It sort of feels like at this point, which is wild because you would think that now that they have told us that it is true and they are in this relationship, that there wouldn't be much more for us to uncover and discover, but there is constantly. And as we know, on April 23rd, Summer House filmed their or taped their reunion, which was 3 parts. It went from I think 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Andy said it was one of the most intense reunions he's ever done and that every question was asked. But then we get this leaked audio, and people were sort of wondering what to do with it because they were like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble with Bravo if I post this. Some people were reading the transcripts. I think I gave you guys the majority of the transcript of the first leak. And then we did find out, obviously, that Bravo did an investigation and they fired the staff person who was involved in this. But 2 other leaks have come out since. So let's go through those leaks. I mean, at the end of the day, we're going to get a 3-part reunion. We normally don't get 3 parts for Summer House, so we know there's going to be a lot there. The total amount of time that we've gotten from all of these leaks has been like probably less than 10 minutes if you think about it. None of it has been so substantive that it has really made us just go like, oh my God, I cannot believe. So, I mean, we're pissed, right? Like we're pissed about what some people are saying, obviously, but it hasn't been anything like crazy groundbreaking to the point where it's like obscene for us to have this information 2 weeks in advance. But that's the point, right? We are going to have this around, I think, May 26th will be when the first part of the reunion airs. But regardless, we might as well go through it now because it's what we want to do. It's what we want to do. So Summer House second leaked audio transcript goes as follows. Kyle. Again, lied to our friends. It makes it all 100 times worse. Andy. And then why not mention knowing? I mean, it could take a casual viewer of the show to look at a statement and say, well, that's weird. And they didn't mention Sierra or Kyle or kind of acknowledge. Amanda says, feel like I'm damned if you do and damned if you don't. If you say, people, okay, and listen, I handle it the way I thought was right to do. Kyle says, Amanda, you're well-spoken. That was a word salad. Amanda said, 100% was a word salad. Levi or Bailey or Dara said, physically with my own eyes, saw you one night kissing and making out with Kyle and then leave with West. Amanda said, I jokingly kissed Kyle. That's your husband, right? We're talking about a period of time where that's your husband. So her defense is like, out of the two people we're talking about here, Kyle and Wes, you're saying that you jokingly kissed Kyle. Like, what? That I can't. So whoever that was, Levi or Bailey or Dara said, it was multiple kisses and I was talking to you like that's crazy to me. And Amanda was like, that wasn't like an intimate romantic, like that was a jokey. And Sierra says, you are married. That was your husband. As I just said, wild. And Amanda says, can you stop saying that? Guys, he was making out with other people. Kyle's going out on dates, but let's come at me for this. Kyle's still married. Where's the hate for him? Where's the anger for him? We should not 100%. We are not together. We are separated. Okay. Sorry, this goes on. So the Andy said, and then Lindsay says, sorry. Oh, okay, whatever. And Amanda said, I didn't, but let's not. It's whatever. I think it's a very important details. Or sorry, I think we are getting a little confused with some of the order of this. Hold on. Let me make sense of this. Okay, so then they're talking about the joint statement, and Andy says, so then who wrote it? And Amanda says, ChatGPT. I was kidding. So we did see that come out in the news that this was part of the second leak that she made this. But I can't tell from the writing if she's saying, I was kidding when I'm saying ChatGPT, or I don't know if she's saying my statement was a joke and I was kidding. I assume she means ChatGPT, hopefully. And then Andy says, when did you find out that this statement was coming out? And he's talking to Sierra, and Sierra said less than 24 hours before it came out. Amanda texted me basically admitting that her and West are whatever. Andy said, did you respond? Sierra says no. Kyle says, she called me and then I had to wait 10 hours for my notifications. Lindsay says, can I back up for a sec? Andy says, yeah. Lindsay says, well, I feel like we're all just like, and we're bouncing around and shit, and it's getting really convoluted up here. I just want to slow down for 1 second. So what I can't stop thinking about currently is the first statement. As we're talking about statements, when Amanda and Kyle put out the statement. So what I'm hearing is that the first time Sierra, maybe Kyle, I don't know, whoever tracked your location is spending the night with Wes was January 7th. Amanda says, didn't spend the night at Wes? And Lindsay said, oh, okay, whatever. Amanda said, I didn't. But it's not whatever. I think it's a very important detail. I was not at West's apartment until unreasonable hours. So this is January 7th that they're debating whether or not Amanda had a sleepover with West. And then Sierra says something that can't be understood. And Amanda says, oh my God, it was a football game and I was there with other effing people. And then Kyle says, so I can just say something. So I do want to clarify. And Amanda says, okay, what's your point? Kyle says, there's something that I think really matters. And Amanda says, Kyle, can you talk about your conversation with Katie when you called her and she let you know exactly what was going on? Kyle says, yes, she came with Katie. She left with Katie. So I guess they're talking about this day, this January 7th, which I guess we're going to find out more about. I guess there was something where Wes and Amanda were spending time together that day, and I guess there was something questionable about that day that made everyone question whether they were sleeping together or whether Amanda slept over. And it sounds like she's saying that she left with her friend Katie. Katie's the one who's going to be on that new show In the City that Amanda's been best friends with since like kindergarten. So I guess what they're saying here is that she came with Katie that day to that event and left with Katie that day. But obviously we're going to find out more about what's going on. And then the third leak goes as follows. So Amanda says, I had an intense amount of guilt. I was freaking out that things were so fresh and new, and I was confused and didn't understand what was going on. The last thing I wanted to do was sit down with Sierra in that moment and be like, I don't know what the fuck is happening. Should I have done that in hindsight? 100%. But I think I was terrified because I knew no matter what, this was going to be a friendship deal breaker for us, and that scared the shit out of me because I had already crossed the line. Okay, let's break this down a little bit. She says she has an intense amount of guilt. And she says that she was really confused and didn't know what was going on. What do you mean? You know what it means to have feelings for someone. You know what it means to do something right. And you know what it means to do something wrong. So what do you mean that you were so confused and you didn't know what was going on? Were you on drugs? Like, it sounds like you made a conscious decision to pursue a relationship with somebody, because we know that she made that comment in the first audio leak where she said, oh, like you can't help who you like. And no, you can't help who you have feelings for, but you can help how you proceed in that realm, and you cannot proceed, right? You can basically, like I said last time, the second that she realized she had feelings for him, the very second she felt a thing, she should have backed the fuck up and stopped spending so much time with him. That's what I think. And so for her to say in this blurb here where she's like, I knew that this would have been the end of my friendship with Sierra. So then how come in all of the other parts of the leak, you are defending yourself to the death? If you didn't do anything wrong, then why would your friendship end with Sierra? Because you did something wrong and because you knew that Sierra would be upset. Okay, so this goes on. Sierra says, it obviously didn't, but then you posted it all online. You literally gallivanted around town. Amanda starts yelling, I wasn't gallivanting, I was. And Sierra starts yelling, you breadcrumbed all over Instagram for months. And Kyle says, I literally thought could not be true because of how much it was being rubbed in our face. And Sierra says, you breadcrumbed people on Instagram. And Kyle said, right up to the very fucking end. And then multiple voices are going, yeah, yeah. And then Kyle says, like, who does that? Lindsay says, who proposed that? Jesse says, hiding in plain sight on Instagram for months. Then Andy says, so let me ask you this. So, okay, well, let's talk about the statement. Lindsay says, long deep. And then Andy says, why did you feel the need to release the joint statement? And I mean, your statement was longer than the statement that you put out with Kyle. And Kyle says, yeah. And Lindsay says 2 months prior. And Mia says 2 months before. Andy says, ending your relationship. And then Carl says, and where was? And KJ says, no apology. And Carl says, yeah. Andy says, talk to me about why you needed to release that. And then I want to talk about what it said and what it didn't say. And Amanda says, like, and Wes says, for the first time, this is the first time he has said anything in basically this entire leak. He says, I think the internet took the shit like incredibly far. And there started to be rumors about Amanda cheating and a lot of things became fake. And we didn't really have control over what was being said. Okay, so that's why you wanted to release that statement, not because you were sorry to Sierra. The only thing that you were concerned about was that people thought that Amanda was a cheater. Who cares? You can figure that shit out later. And as long as Kyle doesn't think that, and as long as you guys had a personal conversation with Kyle about it, then what do you need to let the whole internet know what it is or what it isn't, right? The only reason to let everyone know is because you owe someone an apology and you need to explain what's going to be happening going forward. It was such a weird statement because they didn't even know where they were in their relationship. I heard that at some other point during this reunion, Amanda calls West her boyfriend. So and we do know, we've seen the pictures of them leaving the reunion together and spending the following days together. So we know they're still together. But what's so weird, and some people online pointed this out, is the fact that Wes does not even stand up for Amanda during this reunion at all. So Bravo and Cocktails actually posted this today. She said, Wes explicitly asked that any criticism or heat be directed at him rather than Amanda on his podcast. So that was the clip that we played last week. And then Wes then proceeded to sit silent in all three audio clips that were leaked. And then Kyle responded because Kyle is like deep in the comments these days, you guys, as you know. And he's like, he's all PR and zero intention or integrity. The reunion was a brutal beatdown, and I can't recall a moment where he had Amanda's back. And that's just so fascinating that Amanda is interested in this man who is basically like a man child. Like the reason that she didn't want to be with Kyle is because she didn't want to be with somebody who was out all the time drinking. Now she's with somebody who's out all the time drinking, and she's basically doing that with him. And he doesn't stand up for her. He doesn't support her, right? I thought that maybe there was this part of her where she just felt like needed and wanted again. But to have to defend yourself like that during a 3-part reunion for like 12 fucking hours and not to have your partner support you and back you up, especially when you two are in this together and you literally have nobody else, everyone is on the other side and he doesn't back you up. What are you doing, right? There were moments during all of this where I'm like, people are taking this too far, where they're saying Amanda's jealous, she's a bad person, she's taking on the personalities of the men that she's with. She is now starting to really exhibit all those things, right? All those things that I thought were like, oh, we're just sort of catastrophizing this and making it more of a scandal than maybe it needs to be. These were just some of the thoughts I was having a little bit inside of my head, only in the sense of like, okay, let's like hate this woman and like completely tear her down. But at the same time, I am like so completely baffled by the person that she turned out to be. Now, looking back, we never knew who Amanda was, right? We never knew her outside of Kyle. We never knew really anything about her life, her childhood, her growing up, her friends. I mean, we're literally meeting her first friend 10 years after meeting her, right? We're meeting this girl, Katie, now. But it just shows that we never really knew Amanda. And so this person that I guess I had created in my mind where I'm like, I really like this girl. I'm rooting for her. Everything that she says is right. Everything that her husband says is wrong. And she doesn't deserve to be treated like this. I am now starting to look at parts of her relationship with Kyle and I'm like, maybe some of these things aren't like 100% him. You know what I mean? Like, did he have faults in this marriage? Absolutely, 100%. But she's starting to, in my mind, have a lot more faults than I kind of thought before. Like, even the way this whole season, the way the whole trajectory of this season went. I mean, she's basically has been ignoring him from the jump. And I thought that it was a very immature, stupid thing to say initially when he was like, she's not spending any time with me. But when you look at who she is spending time with and who she's prioritizing, I think it really shows that she spent the at least last 6 months or 8 months of her relationship prioritizing another guy and spending a lot of time with another guy. So, I mean, these leaks really just show us again who Amanda is. I don't know what this means from here because she's supposed to be on In the City. We we're obviously going to see the breakdown of her relationship with Kyle. We don't want to see her relationship with West, and that's not really what In the City is supposed to be. We don't want to see her back on Summer House. I don't know what we're going to do about West because I just think we hate him enough that he's probably just fired. I really don't know. I really have no idea what the network even thinks about him at this point, or if they're going to take us that seriously. I mean, think about like Sandoval and Raquel. They were both asked back. And to think about that and how those two showed remorse and how they stopped being together at a certain point and Raquel went to a mental health facility, but these two are just like keeping on, and are not taking any accountability or showing any remorse. And after watching this last episode, I just don't understand how Amanda could have done this to such a close friend. Okay, let's get into our recap now that we've gone through like the news portion of this, because I feel like this will sort of again just lead us into where we are now. It is so there are certain parts of this that were so obviously cut recently, and I love that they're adding in little tidbits to sort of add to the flavor of this scandal for us. But we start with Ben, Mia, Kyle, and Jesse driving out to the boat together. So remember that we left off where Sierra and West went out to like this boat sort of area. Okay, I am so bad at these shows when it comes to the locations of where they're having conversations. These shows are about the conversations that are happening, not the location. But regardless, they're at a location. They're in the Hamptons. They went out to like this boating area. That's where they had the conversation where they decided that they're going to be best friends again. And the whole crew goes over there to meet up with them. And in the car, Kyle's starting to question, well, like this whole them hanging out again and like possibly having a conversation. Is this where Sierra is going to acknowledge to Wes that she still has feelings for him? And I was like, oh, okay. So the whole house does acknowledge this. Okay. I just wasn't sure if this is something that I just noticed about Sierra, that she was still in love with him and still had feelings for him, or this is something that the whole house is aware of. I'm like, okay. Now, I don't mean to come off stupid or anything. I'm just saying, like, I wasn't sure if the whole house was like really privy to her thoughts and feels in that regard. I just mean, that makes this whole thing just so much more complex. And Mia's like, no, I don't think she's having that conversation with him right now. We're just trying to get to a place where like they can be in the same room. And Kyle's like, oh, I just want them to go get back together. I'm just like a hopeless romantic. And it's like, but what do you even mean get back together, right? The relationship that they were in wasn't even like fulsome. And he never like really called her his girlfriend. Now we're debating that now when Jesse was like showing an interest. And it's just, like it's just such a messy situation. And I feel like the only reason that we are even here, which is something that Sierra brought up in the last episode, is because we're talking about the show and we're talking about TV. Because if you were dating a guy and a situationship or not, you would not 2 years later have to live in a share house with that person, right? That wouldn't happen. And it would be so much harder for you to get over that person if you have to literally live with them and work with them. I cannot even imagine. So in her mind, she must have to convince herself to hate him and that he's a bad person, which is something that she said in a previous episode. I think it was a previous episode because now I'm just like rewatching and I have like no idea when up is down or day is night. But I basically remember her saying something like, we obviously have feelings for each other and we obviously like, feel a certain way. And it's just really hard for me to even admit that like I don't hate the guy. There's nothing that I really like hate about him, but I sort of have to hate him so that I can keep on keeping on. And that makes sense, right? If you don't hate that guy, how are you supposed to be around him, right? Like if you think he's a good guy, or if you convince yourself that he's a good guy, it's going to be so much harder being around him when he's flirting with other people and he's not with you and all of that. So I don't know. It was all well and good that they had this makeup conversation, but given what we know now, and even if it wasn't what we know now, I still wouldn't be like supportive of it. Like I was not one of those people who was shipping them at the beginning of this season because their feelings are never going to match. That's the problem. He's never going to be able to give her the kind of relationship and emotion that she wants in a relationship. And she's never going to be able to give him the very casual relationship that he's looking for. So, point blank, they just, well, I don't even know what to do with that because of the show, but they can't be in each other's lives. That's basically like what it is. Otherwise, she just sits in this like mess of like feelings, non-feelings, feelings, non-feelings for someone. It's just so yucky. So Sierra and Mia end up sitting down on the boat to have a chat, and that's where Sierra explains what happened with Wes and what they talked about. And she's like, I still feel like at the end of the day that he's my person because I feel like we have this really like weird friendship together. And I'm like, no, Sierra, he's not your person. I hate that. And I think that she thinks that because she thinks I'm the kind of person who cuts somebody off. I'm not the kind of person who tries to make up with people. And so I feel like because he's always sort of come back around and he's always just been in her life in the background, she thinks, oh, maybe this is meant to be. But again, I feel like the only reason he's there and in the background is because of the show, right? I, I I think we all know now that he is not her person. He is so disrespectful. He literally a week prior was making out with somebody right next to her, and then she apologized to him. It's just really showing that I just wish she had a lot more self-assurance in herself. Maybe she does now after this scandal has happened and she has realized how ridiculous he is because this man is just, he's not your person, right? Like, he's not your person. So Mia tells her that she's proud of her, but like, no, like saying that he's your person, like, don't be proud of her. Let's not be proud of that, okay? We're proud of all the other things that Sierra is accomplishing and doing, but let's not be proud of her for thinking that Wes is her person. And hopefully that does not last long. So everybody decides to call Amanda because she's not there that weekend, remember? And so they had this group chat apparently where the night before West was like, oh, this was the best day ever. And so when they call Amanda, Amanda's like, oh, I can't believe that Wes said that in the group chat. And Kyle and Sierra are like, why? And she's like, well, Wes had the best day ever when I'm not there. That's so mean. That's awful. I can't believe he had such a great time without me. And Kyle's like, all right, you're making it about yourself, but cool. I did not realize how often she does that. Like, I really didn't. Even when I was thinking about that moment, because I'm watching back, I was thinking about that moment with her and Sabrina that we didn't see, the moment at Lindsay's housewarming where she says to Sabrina, they're having a nice conversation, then ends it with, oh, and Ben was in love with me all summer. Everybody thinks Ben was in love with me. Why did you say that? Right? I mean, looking back, it really does show that she's trying to show everyone in her wake, look at me, pay attention to me, everything is all about me. And again, this is something that a lot of people have been saying during this entire scandal when they've been like analyzing it and breaking it down and trying to figure out who Amanda is. And this was one of those things where I was like, no, this is silliness. We're all just making this bigger than it is. But no, I really do believe she is this person now who needs everything to be about her and she needs to be the center of attention, or at least she's doing that this season, right? Like it's very evident that it's not even like in a joking way. It's in a very like, what about me kind of way. But it's also very interesting. And obviously they cut this in for a purpose, right? It shows that like the only time that like West, or the only time she gives a shit that she's not at the house is when West is having a good time without her. And it just shows that like, she wants to be where West is and she wants to be having a good time with him. So that's just so bizarre. We do get a conversation with Mia and Dara talking about her being exclusive with KJ. And I really do love the relationship that KJ and Mia and Sierra have together. They're almost like big sisters to him, and I think that's really cool. But when it comes to the Dara relationship, I think that, and as KJ and Dara said in the last episode, they've done a very good job of like forming a relationship without making it everybody else's problem, right? But at the same time, I feel like then maybe it's a little much to butt in. I know that Mia is just trying to be helpful, but when she's saying things like, you're older and you're in a different place than him, we don't necessarily know that. And at the same time, Mia and Dara have actually known KJ for like the same amount of time, right? Like Mia and Sierra may be big sis to KJ, but they actually haven't known him that long. And I don't even know if they necessarily know him better. Like you could argue maybe they do because they spend a lot of outside time with him, but I'm sure that Dara does as well. So yeah, I mean, I think Dara did a great job of not getting like defensive whatsoever about it. She was actually like taking it in really well. I just don't know how I would feel about it if somebody was just like kind of questioning my relationship because of my age or maybe being in a different place. But again, I think she handled it super well. And I love the way that this cast just really blends together. And whatever Mia said to Dara, we know that she did it with the purest of intentions. We know that there was nothing bad about it. And maybe that's why Dara was so receptive to it, because you can just see that Mia is doing it so much out of just kind of love for him. Um, so Jesse talks back at the house about this whole thing with West, and he's just really worried about how it's going to be with Sierra because he's like, we can't just really just go from them being like not speaking for 2 years, but then like automatically friends. So he's kind of confused by it when he sees them holding hands on the boat because they basically do that to be like, hey, everyone, we're holding hands. We're best friends again. He's just sort of like, I really don't know how this is going to go. But he's also kind of worried about Kyle and Amanda because he feels like, they've been fighting all summer. It really feels like he's more so on Kyle's side of the situation because he's talking to Sierra at one point over the weekend and he's just like, well, you can tell that Kyle is having like a much better time now that Amanda isn't here because she isn't yelling at him for him being who he is. I mean, listen, sometimes does she yell at him for stupid reasons? Sure. But sometimes is she yelling at him for legitimate reasons? Yes, I would also say that as well. And Jesse says that they're either going to have to figure out, loving each other with their faults or I don't know. And basically he's saying that to Kyle. And Kyle is saying like, I don't want to talk about Amanda anymore because it's draining. I'm having a really good weekend. And I feel like that's sort of telling as well, right? I feel like, Jesse, I don't really know what Jesse is doing this season. Sorry, guys, I'm talking super fast today. So my apologies. I know I always talk fast, but I'm talking exceptionally fast. I feel like um, Jesse's role this season I feel like he doesn't want to get as much in the mix as he was last year because he got like a lot of hate from a lot of people. But at the same time, I think that he's trying to maybe play this sort of peacemaker role. So I'm hearing him say to people a lot, either Kyle and Amanda or Sierra and Wes, like, I just hope they figure it out. I hope things work itself out. Do you kind of want to talk about it? So I feel like he's trying to be that sort of not even a peacemaker role, but sort of maybe an ear. And he even made similar comments at the beach about Kyle and Amanda. He's just like, it's just really sad to see them like this. And I've seen him say that sort of thing kind of over and over again. So then the crew heads back to the house. And back at the house, Wes hugs Sierra for like an inappropriately long duration of time. Like it made me so uncomfortable. It must have made her have all of the feels. It was just no. So then Ben and Kyle and Sierra all get in bed together. And I'm like, are these the new bed bugs? Because I'm not like absolutely hating it. And they call Sabrina to basically like download her on what's going on. And Sabrina's like, okay, tell me everything. What happened at the end? And she's like, well, we agreed to be best friends. And then Sabrina goes, oh, well, I heard that he has a crush on you. So apparently this is what Wes told Ben one night, and then he told his girlfriend, which, happens in relationships, but it's just very frustrating. He is very much playing in her face. Like there is no other way to look at this. It's one thing if he was just straight up saying, Sierra, I do not have feelings for you whatsoever. I just want to be friends. But he's not doing that. He is messing with her. He's saying things like he has a crush, he's sitting on her, but then he's saying that he wants to be her best friend. All of these things are extremely confusing to someone who clearly still has feelings for you. This is so cruel. This is so mean. And for him to truly think that he has been handling this the right way this whole time is absolutely just baffling to me. Sorry, guys. It just makes me really upset because I just feel just really bad for Sierra because I feel like we've all been in a situation like this where we've been really into someone who's not that into us and they're giving us really mixed signals and we're really confused about what's going on. And at the end of the day, they end up ending things with us and say something like, you knew I wasn't into you. You knew this was never going to be anything. And then you sit there so dumbfounded and confused as to how you even got here. Do you know what I mean? And you question yourself and you're like, did I play too much into this? Did I not do enough to get myself out of this situation? What did I do wrong here? When in fact, this person was really fucking with you and was really messing with your heart. So I just want to say that for the sake of saying it. So then the crew sits down for dinner. Carl tells them that he's having an opening, basically like a soft opening for Soft Bar. And as we know, Soft Bar is now fully open and it's been doing pretty well. So good for him. And he talks about how he's really thankful to all of the people who contributed and invested. And then we have Kyle talking to the camera being like, okay, I don't know why Carl is bringing this up now. We talked about this investment thing like 7 months ago, and then we talked about it again this summer. And like, I've been really open with him and communicated with him about like what's been going on with me financially. So it's Carl who's not communicating with me. It's Carl because, I'm hearing from everybody else that he's upset with me, but he's not communicating with me. Well, we heard Carl explain this in a previous episode where he just sort of feels like a beta to Kyle's alpha. And he doesn't really know how to address him when he wants to have a difficult conversation with him. And I think a big part of that is not because Carl is not capable of a difficult conversation. I think he very much is. And he's actually doing really amazing on his podcast. His podcast is, not only just doing well, but he's a really good interviewer. So I just want to mention that. But I feel like he has so much guilt when it comes to Kyle because he knows that Kyle really saved him from a shitty situation, gave him a job when he was sort of unhireable. And so I feel like he always feels like he owes Kyle for that. But you can't owe someone forever. And you have every right to want certain things in a friendship and to need certain things in a friendship, regardless of whether that person has been there for you in years prior. You know what I mean? You're allowed to still want and need things in a friendship as a friendship progresses. And you don't owe that person for the rest of your life because they did something nice for you. Kyle is not treating him as a good friend now. And he has every right to Carl has every right to tell Kyle that and to get a better friendship with him in return. Because quite frankly, at the end of the day, I think that Carl is right. Carl is all that Kyle has. And he's going through a really hard time right now. Carl is making a significant effort to be there for Kyle. And I feel like Kyle should do the same, regardless of all the stuff that he's going through right now, because if he doesn't have Carl, what will he have? So I think he should put the effort into the friendships that he does still have. Then we have this really kind of sad scene where Kyle is texting Amanda to say good night because she's not there that weekend. And he talks about how his text thread with her is really sad and dismal because it's basically just him talking and her not responding, where he's like, I've landed. I had a good set. I had a great night. Good morning. I've landed. Hope you're well. And that's a little odd. I mean, that being said, I will say this for argument's sake. The majority of the text examples that he gave us were things that do not really necessarily require a response. They require maybe a thumbs up or a K or something like that. I don't know what Amanda's text style is. I don't know if she's a big texter. I don't know if she's the kind of person who doesn't respond to text very often or doesn't do the K or thumbs up or things like that and just allows you to just kind of pick up what she's putting down. I'm not really sure, but it was one of those moments that made me a little sad, right? And then they definitely added this in. This is so a second moment where they wanted to add in about this group chat where, again, Amanda makes that comment about being pissed off that West had the best night ever without her. So in the group chat, she wrote, damn. And so Kyle brings it up to the camera being like, oh, it's sort of funny that it took West saying that he didn't have he had the best night without her to actually get her attention. Isn't that interesting? And again, it's just too perfect. I can't believe that statements like that were actually being said during the summer, which just so perfectly lead us to the point that we're at now. It's just wild to me, right? So Mia ends up joining the conversation with Jesse and Sierra talking about Kyle. So they're all just sitting in the bed talking about Kyle and Amanda. Jesse says that Kyle doesn't even seem upset that Amanda wasn't there over the weekend. Mia even says that she's never seen Kyle, just so elated and having such a good time. Because think about how he was this summer. Pretty much from day one, he was like in a funk, super depressed, but he did seem to feel, his best self this past weekend because, yeah, his wife wasn't there. And Jesse says that Kyle doesn't want to talk about his relationship anymore, which we did hear Kyle say earlier in the episode. And because he knows that he's going to say something bad and then he's going to get in trouble for it. So he knows there's really no point in saying anything. And I don't disagree there, right? Like every time he does talk about Amanda, it is quite atrocious. And so it really would be in his best interest to just shut up about it when it comes to talking about her on camera. I would agree. But then Jesse throw something out there that I thought was kind of wild. He says that Carl told him that Kyle and Amanda have not had sex in years. And I was like, wait, what? Years? I mean, Sierra doesn't really say anything in that moment. She doesn't stand up for Amanda and say that's not true, but it's also not her business to say. I think back to last year when Paige and Amanda were trying to talk to Lindsay about her sex life with Carl, or 2 summers ago. And, Paige is saying when Craig and I first started dating, we were having sex like every single day. And Amanda said the same thing. She's like, don't look at me because we've been together for 10 years. But when we first got together, it was every single day. So I remember thinking to myself when she said, don't look at me, we've been together 10 years, that they're not having as much sex as they used to. But we don't know a lot about their sex life. Like pretty early on, like maybe season 4, we had Kyle complaining about it a little bit. He complained about it on camera. Amanda was super pissed about that, understandably, went to the bathroom and was like, I don't want to talk about this. And he's like, why? Like, I thought after we hung out today that we'd have sex. Why are you upset? Why don't you want to talk about this? But like, it's a very like embarrassing, weird thing to kind of talk about on camera. But yeah, we don't really know much about their sex life. We don't hear about it. So it's interesting to hear this. I don't know if it's true. It's kind of wild. I mean, they've been together for 10 years, but they're also a young, hot couple. So it's kind of hard to picture, but their relationship is in such a bad place. But how can they genuinely not see that they're in such a dire place if they haven't had sex in years? Like, did they really think that there was any coming back from this if they haven't had sex in years? I don't know. But if it came from Carl, I feel like that's pretty legitimate, right? I mean, like, who knows more about Kyle than Carl, which is something that Kyle says earlier in the episode. He's like, Carl knows me better than anyone here. He knows about my sex life. He actually says that. Carl knows about my relationship. He knows about my sex life. He knows everything. And then you have Jesse saying later on, Carl said that they haven't had sex in years. I mean, I guess it could explain a little bit more why Amanda was able to move on so quickly. But still, I find it very interesting that they have been at this place in their relationship for this long a period of time and really thought that going to couples counseling at this point was going to save it. So we do get into that right about now. So we're back in the city. Sierra and Amanda are hanging out. And Amanda says that she really just needed to stay back that last weekend. She was feeling like she was falling into a depression again. She was feeling tired and not like herself. But she and Kyle just went to therapy, like literally just now, right before this. And basically she tells the therapist, so we were together, and then he said he didn't want to define the relationship, and then he made up with a bunch of people and he broke up with me, but then he got back together with me, but then he cheated on me, but then we got married, and then there's been rumors ever since. And the therapist is like, okay, but has there been any love in there whatsoever? Like, you missed the love story part of this, which I think is what us as fans, we've always kind of said about this, right? We've said, like, have we missed that part? There was moments where we saw them being a little cute and happy, but just moments, right? Like small moments in time. And I don't remember like a long period of time where we saw them like genuinely in love and happy, where they didn't really have major problems. So I just think it's so interesting that we are where we are. She talks a little bit about how Kyle seemed sort of maybe depressed or off put by the things that she was saying in therapy, but she felt that it was really, really important for her to get what she was saying off of her chest. She said that she talked about their issues in their relationship being more so the trauma that she experienced closer to the beginning, which is obviously the cheating, while Kyle is talking about everything sort of post wedding. So they're talking about their relationship in terms of like different phases. They are at different points in their relationship problems, if you know what I mean. So for Amanda, their problems are still residing in a place that she has not been able to get over. And quite frankly, I don't think she should have married him if she wasn't over that situation at the time. This is obviously something that has plagued her for many, many years to come. And it just shows that she's never really got over the cheating. And I don't blame her, right? But she shouldn't have married him. She shouldn't have married him. And he thinks all of their problems have happened since they got married. So they're not even on the same page in terms of what their problems are, which again just shows how far off we are to them even fathoming the possibility of coming back together. And I don't even know what they're thinking at this point in time. Again, to be going to therapy in late August 2025. Anyways, so Carl has his launch for Soft Bar, and he makes this really beautiful speech about the people who aren't there. He talks about his brother. He talks about some of the business owners and some of the people who are involved. And he talks about how it's sort of like, grief can be really complicated, where he knows that Soft Bar wouldn't have existed if his brother wouldn't have died. But he tries to sort of reconcile that in his brain with, my brother must be here leading me and guiding me, because at the same time he would burn down Soft Bar in order to have his brother back, right? We always want those people back in our lives. But I think there's something to be said about, becoming spiritual or trying to look at things in that capacity. A lot of people do end up finding religion after death, right? Or after somebody dies, because I think they're looking for something, for guidance, for understanding. And I feel like either religion or spirituality or different things like that can really sort of bring you that sense of peace that I think that Carl really needs when it comes to his brother. And so he sort of takes on that spiritual capacity where he's like, I know that my brother is up there and he's thinking about me and he's guiding me and he's making sure that I'm doing the right thing. So Kyle is kind of pissed off because he believed that Soft Bar was supposed to have Loverboy non-alc on the menu, which I didn't know about, and we hadn't heard about that before. But he says that he hooked up with Carl with like the guy, whoever the guy is involved in the distribution, and this was supposed to be like a thing. So if this is supposed to be like a thing, then I'm like, ooh. And now he's like, oh, is this because of the investment? So now he's kind of put off by it, but I don't know if we're going to end up getting this resolved. I feel like we have 3 episodes left. I don't know if Kyle is going to confront him about this, but if this was something that they had agreed upon, that this was like a conversation and this was for sure going to happen, then it's one thing. But I have a feeling that this was probably a misunderstanding, that maybe Carl was considering putting it on the menu, but then decided it wasn't a good idea for whatever reason. At the end of the day, this is completely Carl's baby, his establishment, his everything. And he doesn't owe Kyle for the rest of his life. But again, I think we need a little bit more context in terms of how this agreement, if it existed at all, even sort of came to be. So Lindsay does decide to go because obviously we are filming, but whatever. She brings a friend of hers, Genevieve, who I think is going to be on the new show In the City. And Carl's mom, Sharon, is there. And we love Sharon. Sharon is such a cutie. But I cannot believe that it seems to be Sharon's mission at the soft launch to approach Lindsay and I guess clear the air with her, have a conversation with her. Now, she feels like not their last interaction, but she feels like she sort of got in trouble because last year she said on camera that Lindsay was mean to her. So she approaches Lindsay and it's like the most awkward sort of interaction because she's like pushing through this group of people. She's trying to get to Lindsay. Lindsay doesn't turn around. So you have poor Sharon just sort of standing behind Lindsay, trying to awkwardly get her attention. Then she's asking about the baby and telling Lindsay that she looks so great. And Lindsay's like, oh yeah, my baby's just like me. She's mean, just like me. And Sharon doubles down in a way that I thought was so hilarious. She was like, Lindsay, you are who you are. And that's really important. And it is what it is. And I just thought that was so hilarious. Okay, Sharon, you are Mother of the Year. I am obsessed with you. Listen, I love Lindsay, okay? I do, absolutely. But having her sort of like double down on calling Lindsay mean just sort of sent me. And I just thought it was really funny. So Danielle Oliveira is there. We know that she's going to be on In the City. And we find out in this episode that Lindsay and Danielle are not in a good place. They have not been in a good place since February. And it's basically because of the show, because she's been watching Danielle's confessionals and was just like, she was brutal to me. And I'm just like, really not about it. So that's obviously going to come up as we watch In the City and we get sort of a sense of what's going on with their friendship, which is really interesting because I mean, there was a period of time where those two were besties. And then a period of time where they absolutely couldn't stand each other. And they've never been able to really fully come back to where they originally were when they were so, so good. There because there was that period of time where they were like the best of friends. So I'm very curious to see what In the City will have to show us. And then we end the episode with Jesse telling Amanda that Sabrina invited him out with West and Sierra. And West also feels put off by this. He's like, I feel like this is like a double date situation. I'm not ready for this. I feel like we just became friends again. This date thing could, confuse everyone. And I think it's like too much for that. Amanda sort of looks freaked out and says the same thing, but obviously for different reasons. She's like, well, I think that Wes needs to be cautious because I don't think that Sierra can handle a friendship if it's just a friendship. This is all just moving too fast. Now, if we didn't know what we'd know, we would think that Amanda was saying this because she really cares about Sierra and her feelings. But obviously, this is not exactly what this is about. She's probably very jealous at the fact that Wes and Sierra are reestablishing a relationship. And there could even be the possibility that, I don't know, Wes could have the best day ever with Sierra and not Amanda. And that would drive her absolutely fucking nuts. So that's the episode. And I love the fact, again, that they cut in a couple of those pieces to show Amanda just being so jealous in that group chat about West having a great time without her, because I really think it does sort of point us towards how things are going and where we are today. Now, I was able to just watch What Happens Live with Lindsay and Bailey. So let me give you a quick lowdown on what happened there. And we knew that Lindsay would bring it because she's Lindsay fucking Hubbard. Not only does she start by wearing a braided necklace from Miha, which is that ex of Wes, the one that he was apparently with for like 2 years, the one where he was wearing sort of like a necktie that she had made for him, and he had like called her out on Watch What Happens Live. Well, now Lindsay's doing the same and wearing like this braided horsehair necklace from Miha and saying that she is just being a girl's girl. Bailey said that she was a denier about the whole Wes and Amanda thing, but now rewatching it, she sees exactly what we see. She says that the FaceTime on the boat sort of jumped out at them. So the same thing that we were just talking about, where Amanda was like, what do you mean he had the best time without me? That makes me sad, right? Lindsay said that she didn't see anything on the show, but she was also just popping in and out. Like some weekends she was there, some weekends she wasn't. So she wasn't necessarily as privy to exactly what was going on. When Andy asked her if seeing Carl enjoy her gift that she gave him at Soft Bar, so she gave him like this little stuffed bear because he likes soft things, and he hugged it. It was it seemed like something he enjoyed. So Andy's like, did seeing Carl enjoy your gift at Soft Bar, did that warm your heart? And Lindsay's like, I mean, yeah. Okay. I mean, it just shows that Lindsay will never, ever, ever be in a place where she will be friends with him again. I don't feel bad because Carl really, really seems to want that. And he seems to really miss his friendship with her. But that's just like not happening, especially to the point where she's like willing to let Bailey date him, which is just bizarre to me. But, at least she knows, she's a woman who knows what she wants and knows who she is. And that's Lindsay. So she's totally okay, like I said, with Bailey being with Carl, and she thinks that they would be really cute together. She said that Jesse and her went to dinner in Toronto on March the 2nd for Hey You, which is when I was there. I got to meet them. I don't know the date of it. I don't remember the exact date, but it was one of those days because they were here for like, I don't know, a day or two. I got to meet them on one of those days. So I don't know if they're talking about the dinner on the day that I met them or the day before, the day after, but around that time because they were doing Hey You press here in Toronto. And she said that that's when Jesse kind of came to her and said, I feel like something is going on between Wes and Amanda. And Lindsay was like, no, you're absolutely crazy. That absolutely cannot be happening. So she truly believes that Jesse didn't know prior. Like he didn't know much prior to anyone else because he was the one who was bringing it to Lindsay and he was the one who was suspicious. Lindsay thinks the relationship started before, not necessarily last summer, but she's saying that it definitely started earlier than they are saying it is. And she says, not necessarily physically, but definitely emotionally. And I think we can all agree there. Their emotional affair started definitely last summer for sure. Lindsay doesn't think it'll last, and neither does Bailey. That seems pretty obvious. Andy asks Lindsay about Danielle because there was this scene that a lot of people are posting on Instagram or TikTok or wherever of, I believe, season 4, possibly, where the girls are playing like a question game or something like that. And the question is asked of Danielle, who do you trust the least? And she says, Amanda. And Amanda runs off crying. And so Andy asks about that. And Lindsay says, she's always had sort of a checkered history with Amanda, but on In the City, she and Amanda are actually best friends and she really rides for Amanda. So she's having trouble with basically this whole thing. But when it comes to Danielle, she said that Danielle has a really good, like, witchy sense about her, which is always right. She has a very, like, witchy intuition that is always right, but her delivery is terrible. So that's basically Lindsay doubling down that Amanda cannot be trustworthy. And it also sort of implies that maybe her and Danielle have made up because she didn't say anything negative about Danielle during this Watch What Happens Live appearance. Andy asked if either Bailey or Lindsay have talked to Weston or Amanda via text. Lindsay said that Wes and Amanda both texted her. She has not responded to Wes. She told Amanda that she is on her way to Stagecoach and cannot speak to her right now. So she doesn't know when she'll speak to them, but she says that she is just way too busy going to NYU bars. Again, Lindsay just doing the damn thing. And then there's this incident that they're talking about, which I think comes up on the reunion, and it's something that we talked a little bit about when we were talking about kissing Kyle and kissing him in a joking way. And we were confused about that. So we're getting a little bit more context here. Apparently, there was some sort of brunch, some outing on February the 28th. So that would have been 5 weeks after Kyle and Amanda announced their separation, because they announced it on January 19th. So on February 28th, they were all like out to brunch, and Amanda kissed Kyle on the lips a bunch of times and was grabbing his face. And that's, I guess, what Amanda is saying was joking. But Bailey was like, what the hell? That seems so weird because it's February 28th. They have called their separation. And when Bailey kind of made a comment like, this is so weird, Wes said in response, let them do their thing, which is such a weird thing to say about the person that you are currently sleeping with, right? You're literally, wait, what? So Wes, you're literally sitting there watching Kyle and Amanda make out while you're currently sleeping with her? Like, this is just getting wilder and weirder as this goes on. And then Lindsay basically ends Watch What Happens Live with the most epic line ever. She says, imagine using your husband as a decoy for your boyfriend. Boom, mic drop, Lindsay Hubbard. All right, you guys, that is the end of the episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. I gave you a mouthful and a lot of stuff today. Hopefully there are no more Summer House updates for the rest of the week so that I can see you guys hopefully next Monday without any new Summer House updates. That would be ideal because it is getting quite exhausting. Guys, don't forget that I have a whole new podcast called All You Need Is You. New episodes come out every Friday, and it's about living your best solo life. So you can find All You Need Is You on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow The Bravo Investigator on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at The Bravo Investigator. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and join the Facebook page. And I love you, BBs. I will see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Bravo Investigator podcast. For more content, head over to patreon.com/The Bravo Investigator podcast. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at The Bravo Investigator. If you enjoyed the show, leave a 5-star review. Love you, BBs. See you next time.